He was charming, yes, but in a way that felt genuine. He was attentive, thoughtful in ways that made me believe I had found someone rare, a diamond in the rough of disappointing dating stories. He remembered the little things I liked, not just my favorite coffee order, but the way I held my hands when I was nervous, the specific song that always made me smile no matter how bad my day was, the chapter of my favorite book I could never get through without crying. It felt magical, a dream I never wanted to wake up from. I was utterly, completely convinced that I had found my person, the one I could trust with my deepest fears and my wildest dreams, the one who would never, ever let me down. Friends and family, seeing us together, would comment on our seemingly seamless connection. "You two are made for each other," they'd say, their voices filled with genuine warmth and approval. Asterisk, it's so rare to see a couple so in sync. Asterisk, and I drank their words like nectar. I believed them. I wanted to believe them with every fiber of my being. I wanted to believe that love could be that easy, that strong, that unbreakable, a fortress that no outside force could ever penetrate. But perfection is a dangerous, deceptive thing. Because when it cracks, and it always does, it doesn't just chip. It shatters, and it shatters everything you thought was real, leaving you standing in a field of broken glass, bleeding and bewildered. I remember one evening in particular, a moment frozen in time now, heavy with new meaning. We were sitting on the couch, a soft, quiet rain tapping a gentle rhythm against the windows. The room was warm, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp. I said something silly, self-deprecating, and he laughed, a rich, genuine sound that usually filled me with warmth. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine, and held my hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on my palm. That warmth, that closeness, was a comfort I couldn't put into words, a sanctuary. But in that very same moment, as I looked at his face illuminated by the lamplight, I caught a flicker in his expression, a hesitation, a distance in his eyes I didn't understand, as if part of him was somewhere else entirely. I didn't know it then, my mind still clouded by love and trust, but that moment would haunt me later, playing over and over in my mind like a ghost. It was a tiny signal, a blip on the radar, easy to dismiss as a trick of the light or a passing mood. But it was there, a single, dissonant note in our symphony. And it was my first subconscious warning that the beautiful story I had been telling myself about us, the perfect relationship, the unshakable bond, might not be entirely, scrupulously true. I remember the first time I felt that creeping unease, a cold trickle of doubt in a river of what I thought was certainty. It wasn't loud, not dramatic, not the kind of thing that makes you scream or throw things. It was subtle, a shift in the atmospheric pressure of our relationship, almost like the silence between two words, a space where something is being deliberately hidden. He smiled that same familiar smile, the one that once made my heart flutter and my knees go weak, but now it felt distant, practiced, like a performance he was giving for an audience of one, and I was just a prop on the stage. There was a flicker in his eyes I didn't recognize, a fleeting shadow that vanished before I could truly grasp it. Something he was keeping from me. Something I wasn't supposed to see. My mind, ever the loyal protector of my peace, tried to dismiss it at first. Asterisk, I'm imagining things. I'm overthinking. I'm being paranoid, a cliché of a suspicious partner. Asterisk, but that instinct, that primal, gut-deep feeling, doesn't lie. It speaks in a language older than words, and it was screaming at me. It started with small signs, little fractures in the pristine facade of our life together. Little shifts in his behavior that were almost imperceptible individually, but together formed a terrifying pattern. The way he now guarded his phone, angling the screen away from me, taking it with him to the bathroom as if it contained a world of secrets he couldn't risk me glimpsing. The sudden, unexplained late nights working, when he was a man who had always cherished being home before sunset, his presence at the dinner table a non-negotiable ritual. The soft, private laughter that would escape him while typing a message, a laughter that would be instantly silenced. The phone flipped over when he felt my approach. Each tiny action, each averted glance, each carefully constructed excuse felt like a secret waiting to explode, a landmine in the field of our shared history. I tried to brush it off, desperately convincing myself it was nothing, that I was constructing a tragedy out of mundane coincidences. But there's a certain kind of awareness that creeps in quietly, insidiously, like shadows sliding under a door as the sun sets. You try to ignore it, you turn up the music, you light a candle, but it's always there, deepening, whispering a terrible truth that something isn't right, that the foundation you thought was solid granite is cracking under your feet. That whisper grew into a relentless chant inside my head when my heart, my foolish, trusting heart, began to accept that trust, the very bedrock of our love, was crumbling into dust. And then the quiet doubts became screaming, relentless questions. Asterisk, who is he talking to with that soft smile? Why is his phone suddenly a vault requiring a fingerprint and a code I no longer knew? Why did he come home last night smelling like rain and a perfume I couldn't place, something floral and foreign? Asterisk, these questions haunted me, spinning in vicious circles in my mind, playing on a loop behind my eyes, making it impossible to sleep, turning food to ash in my mouth. I began noticing patterns, small but glaring inconsistencies in his stories, little cracks in the carefully crafted mask he wore every day. A business dinner on a Tuesday that he'd previously said was a quiet night in. A forgotten birthday of a colleague he claimed he was consoling. The tapestry of his lies was beginning to unravel, and I was holding the loose thread. The day I found the first undeniable proof, I still remember exactly how my hands shook, how the blood roared in my ears, drowning out the world, was the day everything changed, the axis of my world tilting irrevocably. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a revelation, a stark, cruel truth that left me feeling naked and exposed in a world I thought I understood. My heart didn't just break. It sank, a cold, heavy stone in my chest. My lungs tightened, refusing to draw air, and a flood of emotions, white-hot anger, soul-crushing disbelief, a sadness so profound it felt like a physical void, hit me all at once. A tsunami of pain. I realized in that moment that people can hide behind smiles, charm, and pretty words, but the truth has a weight and a substance of its own. It has a way of catching up. And when it does, it doesn't just politely knock at your door. It kicks it down, splintering the wood and shattering the windows of your illusion. And that's when I knew, with a chilling and absolute clarity, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend. I had to decide what I would do next in this new, horrifying reality. Would I let this betrayal define me, become the weeping victim of his story? Or would I take control, expose the lies, and make sure the truth finally came to light, no matter how much it burned? Little did I know, what followed would test me in ways I never imagined, push me to the very edge of what I thought I could endure, and ultimately show me the terrifying, exhilarating power of turning pure, undiluted pain into decisive, calculated action. Looking back now, through the harsh lens of hindsight, it all seemed so perfect, so brilliantly staged. I remember the early days like they were painted in gold and set to a perfect soundtrack, the effortless laughter that made my stomach ache, the long, meandering talks under a canopy of stars, the way he'd look at me, his gaze so intense and focused, like I was the only person in a crowded room in the entire world. Every little gesture, every shared secret whispered in the dark, felt like proof, irrefutable evidence, that we were meant to be, that fate herself had woven our lives together. We shared so many dreams together, painting a future with broad, hopeful strokes. We talked about our future, adventurous trips to places we'd only seen in magazines, a home with a big kitchen and a garden, maybe even marriage, children. I could picture it all, a vivid film in my mind. I imagined waking up to him every morning, sharing the small victories and the quiet struggles of life, growing old and gray together. I trusted him completely, implicitly. My heart had no room for doubt, only a blind, unwavering faith. And that trust, that beautiful, blind faith, is exactly what made the betrayal, when it came, so utterly devastating, a cataclysm that shook me to my very core. Because betrayal never hits when you're prepared. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in, slowly, quietly, a poison seeping into the roots, until the very foundation you built your world on collapses beneath you, without warning. I thought I knew him, every contour of his mind and heart. I thought he was my safe place, my harbor in any storm. I thought I was safe. But reality has a way of sneaking in, even in the most intimate moments of laughter and love. It hides behind smiles and kind words, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal its ugly face. And when it does, there's no going back. The door to the Garden of Eden slams shut, and you are left outside in the cold, hard world. The warning signs in the beginning were subtle, masterfully so. A missed call he would explain away with a too casual wave of his hand. A text message that would light up his phone, and that he would quickly hide, turning the screen face down with a swiftness that felt like a reflex. A vague, glossed-over story about where he had been, the details fuzzy and inconsistent when probed. I tried not to think too much of it, chastising myself, telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was watching too many thrillers, that I was sabotaging my own happiness. But deep down, in a place beyond rational thought, I knew something wasn't right. My heart was uneasy, a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety, and even in my most optimistic moments, that unease lingered like a stubborn shadow I couldn't shake, a stain on our happiness. And then came the day, the pivot point, when I discovered the first undeniable evidence, a message left open on his laptop, a hidden conversation, a string of words so intimate, so damning, that they served as proof positive that the person I thought I knew, the person I had trusted with my entire being, was not who he claimed to be. He was a stranger wearing a familiar face. I can still remember the exact, visceral feeling. My stomach dropped, a physical sensation of falling. My hands shook so violently I could barely grip the edge of the desk. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. I felt a nauseating mix of disbelief, a roaring anger, and a heartbreak so acute it was a physical pain in my chest. The world seemed to tilt and spin around me, the familiar contours of my home becoming alien and threatening, and for a moment, I literally couldn't breathe, gasping for air like a fish on land. All those perfect moments, the smiles, the laughter, the shared dreams, the whispered forevers, suddenly felt like cruel illusions, a beautiful set on a stage that was now being dismantled. A story I had told myself, a narrative I had clung to so I could sleep at night, so I could believe in the fairy tale of love. And that's when it hit me, a truth as hard as diamond. Love, as I had known it, wasn't enough to protect me from betrayal. Trust, no matter how deep or sincere, could be broken by someone who did not respect its sanctity. And I was standing at a crossroads, with a choice to make, either crumble under the weight of the deception, allow it to bury me, or rise, plan, and reclaim my life, my story, my soul. Little did I know, that choice would define me, challenge me in ways I couldn't fathom, and ultimately show me a strength I never knew resided within the broken pieces of my heart. It started with small things, almost nothing at first, insignificant blips that shouldn't have registered, but did, lodging in my mind like splinters. A laugh he tried to hide, a sound that would cut off abruptly when I entered the room. A text message that would arrive with a cheerful chime and that he would hurriedly put away, as if it were a hot coal. A glance at his phone that seemed too secretive, too intense, to be innocent. At first, I questioned myself, my own sanity. Am I imagining this? Am I overthinking? Is this just what long-term relationships feel like, a comfortable complacency? But there's a fundamental, crucial difference between imagination and intuition. Imagination builds castles in the sky. Intuition is the whisper of the wind telling you the foundation is made of sand. And mine was screaming at me, a constant, deafening alarm bell that something was very, very wrong. The first real, tangible sign came one unremarkable evening. I was waiting for him to come home, dinner growing cold on the table. He had texted, his message a model of brevity. Asterisk got to finish some work. Don't wait up. Asterisk he said he had to finish some work, but he didn't tell me where, who he was meeting, or why it would take so long, stretching deep into the night. That in itself wasn't wholly unusual. He had always been ambitious, busy, but something in the way he spoke when I called him, in the tone he used, a flat, distracted quality, made my skin crawl with a primal sense of dread. Later that night, when he finally returned, smelling of the cold night air and something else, something unidentifiable, I noticed his phone buzzing constantly on the kitchen counter, lighting up with a persistent, silent glow. He kept it close, picking it up and slipping it into his pocket almost immediately, almost like it was a part of him, an external organ. And then, in one careless, unguarded moment, as he was taking off his coat, a notification flashed across the screen. A name I didn't recognize. A message preview, a single, heart-stopping line. Can't stop thinking about last night he saw me see it. His movement stilled. The message was immediately hidden, the screen going dark as he shoved the phone deep into his jeans pocket. My heart skipped a beat, then hammered against my ribs. My mind went blank, then raced, a frantic horse bolting from a fire. I didn't read the full message. I didn't have to. The secrecy alone, the panic in his eyes, was a betrayal all its own. And in that moment, a seed of doubt, no longer a tiny splinter but a thriving, poisonous plant, planted itself deep inside me, its roots wrapping around my heart. Over the next few weeks, the signs became louder, more frequent, impossible to ignore with any semblance of self-deception. He would leave the room, taking the phone with him. When it rang, his voice dropping to a hushed, intimate murmur I couldn't decipher from the other side of the door. He'd laugh at messages I couldn't see, sometimes smiling down at the screen in a way, a soft, private way, that made my stomach twist into knots of acid and anxiety. Little lies started to slip through the cracks of his smooth facade, details that didn't add up, explanations that felt rehearsed, timelines that shifted and contradicted themselves. I began to observe him with the focused intensity of a scientist studying a strange new specimen, noting patterns, recording inconsistencies in the ledger of my mind. Every small act of avoidance, every hidden conversation, every evasive answer became a thread. And I was slowly, painstakingly, starting to see the tapestry of truth forming before me, a picture far uglier than the one he had presented. It wasn't just about trust anymore. It was about respect, about basic human decency and honesty. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that without these fundamental pillars, love doesn't stand a chance. It's a beautiful house built on a toxic sinkhole. One evening, my nerves stretched to their breaking point. I confronted him. It wasn't a grand confrontation, just a quiet, tense moment in our living room. I asked the simplest, most devastating question. Asterisk, who are you talking to? Asterisk, his reaction was immediate, a volcano of defensiveness. His face flushed. His posture stiffened. Asterisk, what? No one. It's just work. God, why are you always interrogating me? Asterisk, and in that instant, in the overblown, panicked response to a simple question, I knew my suspicions were not the fabrications of a paranoid mind. They were founded. There was fear in his eyes, not fear of hurting me, not fear of losing me, but the raw, simple fear of being found out. The confrontation didn't give me the answers I desperately craved. It only raised more terrifying questions, multiplying like Hydra heads. Why was he hiding this? Who was he hiding it from? What was the nature of their connection? And the most haunting question of all, how long had this been going on? Right under my nose, in the home we shared? I spent nights awake, staring at the ceiling, the blue glow of the digital clock painting the room, replaying moments from our past in my mind, trying to find a clue I might have missed, a red flag I'd mistaken for a carnival ribbon. Every laugh, every gesture, every tender word he had ever said began to feel like a piece of a puzzle I was now desperate, obsessed, to solve. The betrayal was subtle at first, almost invisible, a ghost in the machine. But as the days bled into weeks, it became a tangible, undeniable presence in our home, a third person in our relationship. And that realization brought a storm of emotions I could no longer contain. Shock, anger, a profound sadness, and above all, a burning, relentless need for clarity, for the unvarnished truth, no matter how much it would destroy me. I realized that to survive this, to navigate the wreckage, I couldn't let the tempest of my emotions cloud my judgment. I had to become a detective in my own life. I had to see the truth for what it was, gather the evidence with a steady hand, and prepare myself mentally and emotionally for what would come next, for the final, inevitable confrontation. The first signs of betrayal are never easy to recognize because we are wired to believe the people we love. They are small, hidden in the mundane fabric of everyday moments, but they plant seeds that, once watered with doubt, grow into unavoidable, towering truths. And as much as my soul wanted to cling to the love I had believed in, the memory of what we had, I knew, with a cold, hard certainty, that ignoring the signs would only lead to a deeper, more profound hurt in the long run. It was self-preservation now. By the time I discovered the full, sordid truth, I was no longer the shocked, heartbroken woman. I was ready. Ready not just to confront him with tears and accusations, but to take control of the narrative he thought he was writing in secret, my story, my life, and my righteous, carefully planned revenge. And that's where everything changed. The moment the first signs of betrayal became an undeniable constellation of evidence, I made a silent, solemn promise to myself in the dark of night. I would not be the victim in this story. I would not be silenced by his lies. And I would make the truth known to him, and to the world, in a way that left no room for manipulation, for lies, or for weak excuses. I still remember the exact moment, frozen in time like a bug in amber, when everything became undeniable, when the last vestige of my hope was extinguished. I had been gathering the signs, the inconsistencies, the hidden messages, for what felt like an eternity. My heart was a heavy, bruised thing in my chest, weighed down by doubt, but a fragile, foolish part of me still clung to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I was mistaken, that there was a perfectly reasonable, innocent explanation for it all. I wasn't. There are no innocent explanations for a trail of lies so long and so intricate. It was a quiet, gray afternoon, the kind of day that feels like it's holding its breath. The truth didn't dawn on me. It hit me, a physical blow, like a storm breaking suddenly. I didn't need him to confess. The evidence was there, laid out before me on the screen of his tablet he'd foolishly left synced and unlocked, undeniable in its digital clarity. I confronted him there, in the living room, my body trembling, my hands shaking so badly I had to clasp them together to still them. I asked the questions I had rehearsed in the theater of my mind 1,000 times, my voice surprisingly steady. Cold. Asterisk. Why did you lie to me? Who have you been hiding? How long has this been going on? Asterisk. The silence that followed was deafening, thick and heavy, the kind of silence that screams louder than any words ever could. It was the sound of his carefully constructed world crumbling. And then, slowly, reluctantly, his shoulders slumping in defeat, he began to speak.
He didn't look at me.
Every word was a dagger, twisting in the wound. Every excuse felt hollow, pathetic, a child's attempt to explain a broken vase. And as he tripped over his own lies, trying to weave a new story from the shredded threads of the old, I realized with a devastating finality that the person I thought I knew, the one I had trusted with my heart, my dreams, my most vulnerable self, had been living a lie, a double life. A lie I had been too trusting, too blind, to see until the evidence was literally staring me in the face. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me, so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. Anger, yes, a righteous, burning fury, but also a staggering disbelief that this was my life, that this was happening to me. Pain, a raw, gut-wrenching agony, but also a strange, icy clarity, as if the shock had frozen all the messy emotions, leaving only a sharp, focused understanding. The heartbreak was all-consuming. It made my chest ache with a physical tightness, My stomach twists into nauseous knots, my hands tremble with the aftershock. But within that devastating heartbreak, there was a seed, a small, hard seed of resolve, a realization that I couldn't change what had happened, I couldn't unknow the truth, but I could decide, with every ounce of my will, what I would do next. I remember walking away from him that day, tears streaming down my face, hot and shameful, my heart shattered into a million pieces, but my mind was sharp, clear, and terrifyingly calm. The world outside the window seemed colder, emptier, the colors washed out. Every shared memory, every photograph on the wall, every inside joke now felt like a trick my heart had played on me, a cruel joke I hadn't been in on. Every smile, every promise, every whispered, "I love you," in the dark now seemed like a carefully constructed illusion, a line delivered by a skilled actor. And yet, in the absolute depths of that heartbreak, a fire ignited inside me. It wasn't the wild, uncontrolled fire of blind revenge. Not yet, but a steady, determined flame of pure will. I realized that if I let this betrayal destroy me, if I collapsed into a puddle of grief, then he would win. He would have taken my love, my trust, and my future. If I let the heartbreak consume me, then all the love, all the trust, all the time and soul I had invested in us would have been wasted, rendered meaningless. So I made a decision there and then, standing in the wreckage. I would confront him, yes. I would have my say, but not in a moment of blind, hysterical emotion. That would give him power, a way to dismiss me as the crazy, emotional ex. No, I would confront him with the chilling clarity of a judge delivering a verdict. I would face the betrayal head-on, with my eyes wide open. I would force him to confront the full, unedited truth. And then I would take action. I would reclaim what was mine. The heartbreak made me human, vulnerable, real. The betrayal made me aware, jolting me awake from a beautiful dream. And the fire within me, that new, fierce flame, made me strong, stronger than I ever knew I could be. I began to see the patterns not as random hurts, but as a blueprint of his deception. The inconsistencies were not mistakes, but strategic omissions. The ways he had tried to manipulate reality, to gaslight me into questioning my own sanity, became clear now. Each lie he told became a piece of a puzzle that I was now grimly, determinately solving. I also realized something else, something that would become my mantra. That pain, when faced not with fear but with courage and clarity, could be alchemized into power. It could become the very fuel, the relentless force that drives change, that forces honesty into the light, that reveals the truth others are so desperate to keep hidden in the shadows. That day, I cried until my eyes were swollen and raw. I screamed into a pillow until my throat was sore. I felt every single, shattering emotion that comes with the territory of profound betrayal. But I also made a silent, solemn promise to myself, a vow whispered to the four walls of my now-changed world. I would not be defeated by this. I would not let this heartbreak, or his actions, define the rest of my life. I would rise, stronger and sharper than before, and I would expose the truth in a way that was so meticulous, so undeniable, that it would leave no room for doubt, for manipulation, for anything but the bare, ugly facts. And that is exactly what I began to plan, with the focus of a general preparing for a war I never asked for, but was determined to win. Because heartbreak is powerful, yes. It can level you. But action, deliberate, thoughtful, determined, strategic action, is even more powerful. It is the phoenix rising from the ashes. And in the weeks that followed, I would channel every ounce of pain, every shred of anger, every piece of the betrayal into a plan that would not only expose the truth, but also, and more importantly, reclaim my dignity, my sanity, and my control over my own life. The heartbreak was the end of my naivety. The confrontation was the turning point, the fork in the road. And from that moment on, from that decision to fight back, nothing would ever be the same again. The old me was gone. Someone new was being forged in the fire. Heartbroken, furious, yet possessed by a cold, clear determination. I knew I couldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. Not out of petty malice, not out of childish spite, but out of a deep, fundamental need for justice for myself. I needed to reclaim my life, my peace, my very sense of self. I needed to look in the mirror and see a person who fought back, not one who just lay down and bled. And to do that, to achieve that, I had to plan and plan carefully. This was not a time for impulse. It was a time for strategy. I spent long, lonely nights sitting at my kitchen table, the world asleep around me, thinking, analyzing, dissecting every detail of our relationship like a coroner performing an autopsy. I remembered every lie he had told, every one I could recall, cataloging them. Every secret he had tried to hide, every flimsy excuse, every small, seemingly insignificant act that had chipped away at the monument of trust one once had. I wrote things down, not in a chaotic journal, but in a dedicated notebook, creating a precise timeline in my mind, connecting pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know I was patiently, methodically piecing together. The first step, I realized, was understanding him, understanding the why behind the what. Betrayal, I came to see, is not just about what someone did, it's about the arrogance, the sense of entitlement, the underlying why they thought they could get away with it scot-free. I studied his behavior as if he were a subject, his routines, the little ticks and tells that now, in retrospect, revealed his secrets so plainly. The way he would hesitate for a fraction of a second too long when I asked a simple question about his day. The way he would expertly avoid certain topics, steering the conversation onto safer, more mundane ground. The patterns that now seemed so obvious, so glaring, that I was astonished I had missed them before. I didn't act rashly. I didn't send furious texts or make dramatic scenes. Revenge, true and lasting revenge, is not about the hot flare of anger. It's about the cold, slow burn of strategy. I wanted every move I made to be precise, deliberate, and impossible to ignore or explain away. I couldn't rely on the messy, unpredictable fuel of emotion alone. I had to rely on my intelligence, my powers of observation, and my newfound, infinite patience. I started small, building my case brick by brick. I gathered evidence, not just the damning messages, but records of hidden social media accounts, screenshots of inconsistencies in his stories, receipts, anything and everything. Every piece of proof I found, every digital footprint, was another brick in the foundation of my plan. I documented it all with a forensic level of detail, organized it in folders both digital and physical, and envisioned, with crystal clarity, the moment when the truth would finally come to light, not as a messy accusation, but as an irrefutable presentation of facts. It wasn't just about exposing him to the world, though that was a part of it. It was about exposing him to himself. It was about showing myself, more than anyone, that I was capable, strong, resilient, and unbreakable. That even in the face of soul-crushing heartbreak, I could take control of the narrative. I refused, with every fiber of my being, to be the victim in his story. I refused to let him, or his actions, define my story or my identity. As I planned, my mind constantly drifted to the endgame, the final scene. The moment when he would realize, with dawning horror, that his secrets were no longer hidden, that his lies had been meticulously uncovered, that I had not been broken, but had instead risen, clear-eyed and formidable, above the pain he caused. That moment would not be about public humiliation for its own sake. It would be about justice. It would be about the triumph of truth over deceit. It would be about restoring balance. I also knew, with a patience that surprised me, that I had to bide my time. The best revenge, I reminded myself during moments of impatience, is not rushed. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. It unfolds like a well-written story, slowly, deliberately, each chapter building tension until the final impact is so undeniable it takes the breath away. I waited for the right opportunities, for the right moments, for the perfect, poetic timing. I learned to live in the pause. But planning revenge, I discovered, isn't just a clinical exercise in strategy. It's also a profound process of personal transformation. In those long, quiet nights of preparation, while the world slept, I grew stronger. I rediscovered parts of myself I had forgotten, parts one had perhaps willingly buried in the name of being a good partner. My fierce courage, my deep-seated resilience, my sharp, analytical clarity. I realized that betrayal, as agonizingly painful as it is, can be a brutal but effective catalyst for growth, forcing you to shed a skin that no longer fits and emerge tougher, wiser. Every detail mattered. Every lie he told became a stepping stone across the river of my grief. Every hidden truth I uncovered became a weapon in my arsenal, not a weapon to hurt him cruelly, but a tool to reclaim my life and expose the intricate web of deception he thought he could keep hidden forever behind a smile. And as I sat there, night after night, planning, analyzing, preparing, a strange sense of calm descended upon me. The initial chaos of the betrayal had given way to a laser-sharp focus. The paralyzing heartbreak had transformed into a steely determination. The white-hot anger had evolved, cooled, and hardened into a flawless, diamond-hard strategy. I knew that when the time was right, when I finally pulled the trigger, the reveal would not just shock him. It would shock everyone who had bought into the charming, perfect illusion he had so carefully built around himself. And most importantly, it would show me, and through me, the world, that I was no longer the person he could manipulate, lie to, hide from, or betray. That woman was gone. That is the true power of careful, deliberate planning, the alchemical power of turning searing pain into purposeful, decisive action. And as I closed my notebook one final night, the plan complete, every I dotted, every T crossed, I knew one thing for certain, with a peace that felt like destiny. The story was about to change. My comeback was no longer just an idea, a fantasy of revenge. It was inevitable, a force of nature. I was ready.